Welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 14th of August. So coming to the first article, deliberate, don't disrupt. Now the context here is with regards to the recent parliament session and overall for that matter any parliament session. This article is more generic, so that is why it is important. Also it is important for general studies paper 2. Now basically the editorial is discussing about the disruptions that take place in the parliament. So this has been a question in the past also, and this is what is something that is common to India's parliament, and this is something that is repetitive also. So questions can be expected here. Coming to the issues, first and foremost in the context of the disruptions. Now not only disruptions give a bad impression, what happens is that because of these disruptions there are several delays that take place in the passage of bills and sometimes even important bills. So that is one thing that has been talked about. People's faith in the democracy as well as the parliamentary functioning is what gets eroded. The legitimacy of the parliament for that matter. Parliament is almost the temple of democracy. So that is what gets eroded, and that is something that becomes important for us in the context of disruptions. These are some generic points which we all know. We have time and again discussed the negatives of such kind of disruption. So that is what has been talked about first and foremost. Another analysis which has been given in the editorial and which I found important is with regards to deliberation or debating. Now here the editorial is saying that it is not something that is directly impacted by disruptions. Even if there are no such disruptions that take place in the parliament, then also it can happen that deliberation is what is not focused upon. For instance, recently what has happened is that 28 bills are what were passed by the parliament in its recent session. But the deliberation and debates on these bills are what have not taken place adequately is what is being talked about. It is a majoritarian government, no doubt, but there is still a room for debate in the parliament which has been avoided by the government, and this is what has been criticized in the editorial, and that is something that is important. In the recent parliamentary session, only 1/3 of the time of the session was what was set aside for debates. None of these bills were sent to standing committees or for that matter to any parliamentary committee. So this is what gives an impact that debates on these bills, important legislations, are what have been avoided. You should know that the importance of standing committees and parliamentary committees is what is getting eroded in the recent times, primarily because the government is in full power in parliament. So I am also expecting that such kind of a question can also come in the paper, that what is the importance of these committees and what is the impact of a majoritarian government on these kind of committees. So that kind of an analysis is also what you should be prepared with. So that is another thing that I wanted to highlight here, and that is what is going to be important also. So that is another analysis. Another thing that I found important is a mention of the three components of parliament. What are these three components? First component of the parliament is to deliberate. That means it has to debate on important topics. The second component is to legislate. It has to make important laws. And third component is that parliament has to hold accountability of the executive. So these are the three components which the parliament must fulfill. So this is what is important. Once I was hearing a discussion, and I want to mention that point. Once I was hearing this discussion as to the fact during the US president elections, during the discussion it was being spoken that the president election in US, if you will see, is often known for debates. It is often seen that the candidates debate each other on an open media platform. And a question was raised that these kind of debates, should this happen in India also? Should the prime ministerial candidates in India also debate with each other just before elections like it happens in the US? And at that point of time, one of the speakers refuted this idea, and he said that in India, the forum for debate is parliament. So that again is a point that I am reminiscing today. The point becomes important even today, that yes, for India, debates don't take place on media platforms, but parliament is the temple for debate, and debate should take place in the parliament. This should be allowed in the parliament. Just because the government is in full power, the room for debate should not be eroded. So that is what is the entire gist of this article, and it is a relevant one. Coming to the next article, biodiversity in the time of deluge. Now basically this is context with regards to the floods in Kerela which have taken place yet again. This is important in the context of disaster management. This article is important. So coming to the issues, first and foremost, it is important that these floods took place last year also in the month of August, and again the disaster has repeated, which clearly is showing that there is some degree of natural imbalance which has taken place in Kerala, because of which floods are taking place every single year. So that is one analysis which is important. Another analysis is with regards to climate change which has taken place. We have been discussing about these points are repetitive since 1970. Some data has been given, which I am quoting here, that since 1972 to the year 2004, greenhouse gas emission is what has increased by 70%. So that is another piece of information which you can quote in your answers. It is going to be important. It is going to be a good impression. It's going to give a good impression. This is what has resulted in global warming, because of which climate change is taking, rainfall is erratic, and the intensity of rainfall is very, very high. We have discussed this in recent discussions only. Another analysis is with regards to resilience. I told you that there should be safety audits of buildings. Resilience in the public has to be built, because climate change is something that is very difficult to reverse as of now. So at least resilience is what needs to be built. Another important analysis is with regards to Kerala, and rather this is the reason because of which I picked up this particular article for discussion. These questions are what UPSC does ask. UPSC asks analytical questions. It will not ask you directly about floods. It can ask you that why is it that floods are continuously taking place in Kerala only? Or for that matter, why is Kerala so badly impacted with floods? And this editorial gives us an answer to that. And that is what is the most important aspect of this editorial. Now the reasons for this is that there is a structural transformation and a change in the land use pattern that has taken place in the state of Kerala. Basically what has happened in Kerala is that agriculture as a sector, as an economic component, has become insignificant. It is only contributing 11.3%. So agriculture is 11.3%. Services in Kerala are 63.1%. Industry in Kerala is what is 25.6%. So clearly the land is what is diverted for construction purposes and not for agriculture. This has created an imbalance. This is what has resulted in a changed land pattern. So that is one reason. Another reason is the population density. This is a small state but a highly populated one. The population density is 860 people per square kilometer. So what is important here is that compared to India's average population density is 382. So this is almost more than double that. So that is another reason because of which flooding is taking place and the impact of the disaster is so high. Another reason is that in Kerala, there is a lot of, the maximum amount of population are settled abroad. So a lot of remittance is what is coming to this particular state. There is a lot of inflow of money, and this remittances is what has resulted in some prosperity to this region, which has increased construction. There has been more money with the people, so there is increase in construction, luxurious hotels. Tourism is one reason which is taking place. So because of the tourism, the irresponsible building of hotels is also what is taking place, and tourism structures, luxury houses, luxury resorts are being constructed here. So that is another reason because of which there is instability in this particular region. Also what has happened is that majority of the population migrates to the Gulf countries, and once these people come back from the Gulf countries, they adopt the Gulf country model of construction. And this Gulf country model is not something that is successful for the region as fragile as Kerala. So that is another reason because of which this region is what is not stable, and this is facing several disasters and disaster related impacts. So that is what has been talked about. Also the wetland area in Kerala is what is highly impacted. Lots of constructions have taken place and the wetland area has reduced, because of which flooding in this region is what is more common. So that is another important analysis. Please make a note of all of these points. It will become important for you all to analyze, and these points, if you will observe, are from several perspectives. The geographical perspective is what I have discussed. Obviously, the geography of Kerala is such that it is more prone to rainfall, more prone to the monsoon. So that is one reason. Also, because of the economic aspects, where I have told you that agriculture is not contributing much, the land change pattern, all of these are what are going to reflect on several points at several different dimensions in your answer. So this becomes an important topic. Another analysis is with regards to the impacts of disasters on natural ecosystem. Now basically what happens is that whenever a disaster takes place, we only talk about its impact on humans and what was the damage caused, but we never take the impact of a disaster on the entire ecosystem for that matter. So that is what has been talked about. Whenever a disaster like flood takes place, then this results in washing away of the topsoil as well as damage to the biodiversity. As simple as it reads a disaster, a flood-like disaster results in the death of several earthworms is what has been talked about. And when earthworms are not there in soil, this often results in plants or the crops of the farmers catching several viral and bacterial diseases. So all of these factors are also what should be taken into consideration whenever we are dealing with a disaster. So if you have a scope of talking about disaster management, talk about these aspects also, you will be rewarded more. So that's about this particular article. Relevance is about Kerala and importance will be for the disaster management aspect of general studies mains paper. So that is where it's important. Coming to the next article. writing out a clean bill on health. Now the article has context with regards to the NMC Bill, which is the National Medical Commission Bill, which has been passed by the Parliament. For so long we have been discussing this particular bill, there have been so many articles on it, and finally the bill has been passed, and this editorial is talking about the criticisms that this bill is facing. So those issues, those 5 criticisms that it is facing is what have been discussed in the editorial. So coming to those criticisms, first and foremost criticism is against the NEET as well as the National Exit Test. Now basically the NEET is the National Eligibility Entrance Test. Now this is the test based on which selections are done. Previously AIMS and JIPMER were not a part of this particular test. For AIMS and JIPMER, if one wanted an admission in these 2 medical colleges, the person would have to apply separately. Now changes have been brought, and even AIMS and JIPMER are what are within NEET. So this is a good step, though it has been criticized by few. The editorial is advocating that this is a positive step. First and foremost, it reduces the stress on the students. They have to apply for only 1 exam. Also, it eliminates some elitism in some institutions. AIMS has an elitist attitude, and it was known that this institution was not merging under NEET. So that is what has been done away with. Another issue is with regards to the National Exit Test. So what happens here is that after MBBS is what is done by the students, before practice they will have to qualify a test which will be the National Eligibility Test. If National Exit Test, and if they can qualify this test, only then can they practice in India. Also, this test, the scores of this test will act as the basis for PG degrees for the postgraduate courses. So this is what has taken place under the NMC. So this is the first thing that is important. Another analysis that is important is the idea of community health providers. Now, under this particular bill, community health providers have been empowered to provide some limited practice. What will be done is some community health providers will be selected. Some training will be given to them under some regulations, and some fixed training courses will be established, and training will be given to them, and based on this training they will be able to practice some degree of care, maybe primary health care or preventive health care in rural areas. So this is what is being criticized, that this might result in irresponsible behavior. Health is a very sensitive issue, but the editorial is again refuting that. It is saying that this is something that is required in India. 70% of India's population is what is rural, and how many doctors are actually working in rural areas? We all know there are minimal doctors working in rural areas. The rural population does not even have access to basic health services. So indeed this is going to be a positive step, that some community health providers can be trained. It will create employment also, and otherwise also it will be beneficial for the rural society. So that is what has been talked about. This is a model that has been adopted by countries like China. In Thailand also this kind of a model is there. Even in United Kingdom this model is there. It has also been adopted in states like Chhattisgarh and Assam. They have experimented with this, and this is what has been successful. So taking a lead from these examples, this is what has now been regulated in India and allowed in India. So this is important. Another decision that was taken was with regards to fee regulation. Now what has happened is that 50% of the seats in private medical institutions will have their fee regulated. So this is again being objected to. Some are saying it should have been 100%, some are saying that it is an interference by the government in private institution. So that is what has taken place. This is a new development under this bill. Also, the number of elected representatives are what have been reduced, and this is one of the major criticisms that is coming against the NMC. Now this is something that should not have been done, because as a result of this the commission is losing the powers of the commissions are what is getting diluted. That is what has been talked about, and this is another analysis with regards to the powers of the centre. Now it has been criticized that the centre is what has been given overriding powers on the medical commission. So this is again something that is new, a newer development. Previous to this, the Medical Council of India was largely acting as an independent body, and despite the fact that it was the centre government that was answerable to the people, the Medical Council of India was not answerable to the central government. So to correct this folly, now some changes have been brought, and the centre government has overriding powers on the NMC, and it can direct the MNC. It can ensure that its decisions are what are being followed by the NMC. That is what has taken place. I am expecting some more analytical articles on the NMC. This is a major legislation. In the past we have discussed several articles on NMC, but all of those articles become irrelevant now, because finally the bill has been passed and its recent form is the form that you should know about. So I am definitely expecting some more articles on the NMC. So definitely let's hope we'll be discussing this in future. future as well. So that's about this particular article, and that's about our discussion. There has been another article on Jammu and Kashmir issue. Again, the analysis was with regards to the decision being taken in the context of the international scenario. If you watch my video on Jammu and Kashmir, we have discussed this aspect very much in detail about the Afghanistan issue, how Pakistan becomes important for Afghanistan, and Pakistan could have leveraged its position in with the US primarily for Kashmir just to give some benefits in Afghanistan. So all of that I have discussed, so it would have been highly repetitive. So please, for those of you who have not watched that video, please go and watch that video. That is an all-encompassing video on Jammu and Kashmir. So that's about this particular article, and that's about our discussion. I thank you all for watching the video.